back. It feels like it's been forever, y'all, but welcome to Studio Chatter. I'm Craig Reeves. Today's guest is Alex Heflin, a super talented producer and multi-instrumentalist who has released his first album, Room for Everyone, which is available right now on Spotify. The album is also available on vinyl. I would highly recommend getting it on vinyl because it's absolutely sensational. A link to where you can buy it on vinyl will be in the description below if you're watching this on YouTube. Alex also worked at Universal Music Group, and we talk a lot about what he learned about the business of music, the good, the bad, and the ugly during his time there. This interview was awesome, so let's just get right to it. Alex Heflin, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Back home.
Back home from Los Angeles, right?
Yeah, I just flew in. Flying towards the East Coast is always weird, so I guess I flew all day yesterday, but I was going to say I got in last night.
Yeah, the time zone difference is pretty substantial. It's a 3-hour time zone difference from the West Coast to the East Coast, and it can definitely be felt when you come home because it's like, wow, I thought it was like 4 o'clock and it's 7 o'clock. You know what I mean? So
I woke up at noon today and I was like, when am I?
Yeah, so home is West Virginia, is that correct?
That is indeed Morgantown, West Virginia.
Morgantown.
I like to think about it as 30 minutes south of Pittsburgh because people are always like, oh, you live in a crazy conservative state. But Morgantown is a kind of liberal college town, and it's more like socially affiliated with Pittsburgh. So.
Yeah, definitely. When people think of West Virginia, they think of coal miners. They think of the coal industry, and they might think of Joe Manchin right now, but they definitely don't think of music. What is the music scene like over there? Because you said it was a college town that you're living in, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I was actually talking with my friend last night. When I got in, I met up with one of the guys who played on my record, Room for Everyone. John Posey's his name. He only played on the one like old time sounding track, which was Headed Home, Come On Down. But we met up and went to a local jam, and there were 15 people there playing old time music. And I'm not super good at that music because it's not like where I've come from, but I play instruments that fit in, so I love trying to play and seeing what I can learn. But there's a lot of organic music that happens around Morgantown in a variety of genres. There's a lot of history in terms of like Appalachian music, and there's this jam that happens on campus actually that's been going on for 40 years, the Percival Hall Jam, and all these guys get together and play old time tunes. But because of the college, there's a lot of people that play jazz music around town, which is actually, I studied jazz here, and there's just a huge community appreciation for music, which is the thing that I think that I value the most. That you can walk into most coffee shops and they'll just have live music, which is not something that'll happen in a lot of bigger cities because it's easier for them to book, big artists, and they don't care so much about the little guy.
And you went to West Virginia University, is that correct?
I did. Back in 2014, I got my master's degree in jazz mandolin there.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. That's amazing. And you're 31 now, right?
Yeah, I am 31 now. That's I was younger at the time.
All right.
But it was a crazy learning experience, though, going to WVU. I started there in 2014, and due to some kind of sad circumstances, the director of the program ended up retiring when I was halfway through. And at the time, it was just my buddy John, who I just mentioned, who I hung out with last night, and me were in the grad program. And he graduated at the end of that year, and there was no one to replace the director. So the two of us taught every single class in the jazz program for an entire year. And that is the one year where I learned more about music in my life than any other year. It was like, all right, if I have to teach jazz theory and jazz arranging and big band and combos, I'd better know my stuff. So I just dove into it, and I never looked back.
Definitely teaching can make you learn faster than actually learning in a lot of cases.
I was like, I would like be reading the book all morning and then go into class and be like, all right, guys, like, this is how you do it. I hope.
Because you got to at least pretend like you know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So you are very good at a lot of things. But what people don't realize is you got really good at producing, and you really haven't been producing for a super long time. The album that you came out with, Room for Everyone, which you released in March of this year, is absolutely brilliant. You guys need to go listen to it. There's a lot of jazz influences, which, would be obvious given Alex's background, but it really is an outstanding album as far as the engineering and the recording. What was it like putting together that album? And can you talk to us a little bit about the process that you go through creatively?
Most of it happened right here in this room. I bought this house right at the beginning of the pandemic, and it's West Virginia, so the house was under $100,000, which means that I could do that. And I had moved here from Los Angeles because I was working at UMG in their Santa Monica offices, and they told everyone they could work remotely, so I moved out here. And the first thing I wanted to do, I've always wanted to have a studio, but it's really hard to have a room to do that in Los Angeles. So I came out here. I was like, I have a second room in my house. I'm just going to fill it with instruments and recording equipment. And then I was like, I should be doing something with that. So I decided to kind of learn how to produce. And I made a couple like small pieces that ended up on the record. The two that I worked on first were Newgrass and Casio. But I didn't think at that point in time I was going to make a record. I was like, I want to make something electronic. So I made, really, the first full song was Newgrass. And that one came together pretty quick. I was learning a lot from Jeremy Blake of Red Means Recording.
Oh, yeah. Really great.
And he's just such an encouraging human being. I'm not sure if he knew that I had any background in music at all, but I had like exchanged a few messages with him on Twitter, and I met him at NAMM in 2020, I guess, really early 2020. And every time I had a question, he was willing to answer it, and that was incredible. So because of that, I was actually able to produce the first song. And at that point, I was like, ooh, I would love to make like, a 3-track EP. I'm going to do that. That sounds really fun. So I made 3 tracks, and it was like really inspiring. And at that point, I was like, oh, I'm going to just do like a 5-track EP. And it kept going until I landed on 10 as like something that feels good for a record. And I wanted to really explore as many genres and ideas as I could. So I had this like big sheet of like all of these genres ideas and time signature ideas, and I tried to make the record as diverse as I possibly could, and also challenge myself, which meant there were a lot of nights that I was sitting in this chair working on the record, like on my 100th take of a saxophone solo, crying because I thought I would never succeed at it. But I'm ultimately happy with the way that it turned out.
Yeah, so one of the things that people might get when they listen to your album, because it was what I got, it was what I initially thought, that, wow, Alex must have a network of really fantastic musicians, because the live instruments is like the way they're played, it's incredible. But then you go to the credits and you realize that most of the playing of live instruments is you, Alex Heflin. So you play a lot of different instruments extremely well. And that's what a lot of people may not realize. But you did get some help from some really great musicians, and they were all local. Is that correct?
Some of them were local, and some of them... So there's like 2 groups of musicians that I hired. So I had a few local friends. There's 3 main guys. John Posey was one who co-wrote Come Undone and Headed Home. And then Nico Kreider, who plays in... or I guess used to play at this point, in a band here that's kind of like locally famous called Jacob's Ferry Stragglers. And then Eli Weedman, who's a drummer Eli Weidman is incredible. I wasn't feeling very good about a lot of the programmed drums, so this was like right when the album was finishing, and I called him and I said, "Come on down, like bring a drum kit, like we're gonna record whatever you want on the record." So I played every song for him, and he did like 1 or 2 takes on everything and just nailed it. Like the one song, Hindsight, the like synthwave song in 7/4, I hated the drum beat that I had, and he came over, and the song is in 7 with some parts that are 5/7. He listened to it once and went, "Oh yeah, I got that," and then like played an entirely new drum part, and we did 2 takes. I just don't understand. He's just one of those like supernaturally gifted people. So that's the first group of like of guys. Those are all local, and then the other mostly just plays on Guest Room, which is Jordan Rose, the drummer. He played on a few tracks. He played on Casio, Guest Room, and Goodnight Louise. He actually is the Theo Katzman's touring drummer, who Theo Katzman is a member of Wolfpack. And then Nick Campbell, who is the bassist in Shrek is Love, is his personal band, but he also plays a lot with Scary Pockets. He's absolutely incredible. And then Steve Watkins, or Swatkins, played organ on that one track as well. But everything else on the record is me, except Jay Herlock. Sorry.
Oh yes, Jay Herlock, of course, who was a guest on the show. Phenomenal musician. I definitely hear Wolfpack's influence in y'all's music for sure. Like I definitely hear that. Do you record your players live, like all together, or do they kind of just record like one at a time?
So we mostly, for this record, did everything one at a time, just because it was during COVID and it was easier, especially since because Jay Herlock lives in New Jersey, I believe, and the 3 guys that I mentioned on Guest Room all live in Los Angeles. It just made sense to do a remote session, so I sent them stems, and then they sent me stems, and that was kind of it. But the Headed Home, the way that we recorded that, actually, it was 3 of us on that track. It was me, John, and Nico, and we just sat in a circle in this room, and I set mics up here, and then we knocked the whole track out in like 2 to 3 hours. We just,
how did you meet these guys?
Which guys? All of these folks? There's 7 people.
Well, yeah. How did you meet the local guys?
So John Posey was the guy who was in the master's program at the same time as me. Nico Kreider shows up at a lot of the same jams that the 2 of us do, playing old time and bluegrass music in this area. And then Eli Weidman, the drummer, I used to run. There's like one jazz jam that's in town at a place called Morgantown Brew Pub. Happens every week, and I ran that for 2 years. And he was kind of the house drummer for that, and that's how we got close. But we've just stayed in touch since then, because I think he's such an amazing. Well, I mean, he's an amazing human and an amazing drummer. So yeah, that was that. And then the rest of the people, like I met Jay Herlock through the Bad Snacks Discord, and all of the LA session guys, I just DM'd them on Instagram, and I was like, please play on my record.
Yeah, hitting people up on Instagram is always a humbling experience because you really don't know if you're going to hear anything back. And then 90% of the time, at least for me, I don't.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I've always said that you've made it when you're ignoring DMs on Instagram. And the reason I say that is because at one point, there was a time where I was doing better for myself musically than I am now. And people would email me and I just wouldn't have time to respond to all the emails. So I kind of have empathy for the musicians who are always getting hit up for collabs and everything, because I was at that stage at one time in my life. So yeah, it's definitely an experience. So you grew up playing saxophone, is that correct?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was, I played that through college, all the way through college, and I got my bachelor's degree in saxophone.
And so all those 6 solos that y'all are hearing on the saxophone are from him. And on top of that, you are a phenomenal mandolin player. very, very good at that too. Your master's degree was in jazz mandolin.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you ended up doing a cover of a piece from Bojack Horseman, the well-known and critically acclaimed Netflix series. You did a cover of one of the songs on that soundtrack, and the folks from Bojack Horseman actually ended up putting your cover as one of the songs on the credits to one of their episodes. What was that like?
Well, I still can't believe it. It was incredibly lucky of me because I was just a fan. At the time, I was doing a lot of covers of video game music and TV music. There's like a pretty active video game music community on YouTube that I was a part of. A lot of wonderful humans. I mean, a solid 20 to 30 that I would talk with regularly. It's been a while since I've done any of that stuff. But the reason I ended up doing that cover was a DM. Somebody was like, I love like all these like old Pokemon covers that you're doing. Could you do the theme song and ending theme to Bojack Horseman? And I was like, sure, I love that show. And I put it up and I posted it on Reddit, and it got like a couple thousand views. Like it was good, but it wasn't like incredible. And then apparently someone who worked for the show found it and forwarded it to their music director. And then he reached out to me and was like, we would love to put this in an episode because we have an episode where somebody goes to the Midwest and we want like a bluegrass folky version of it, and this fits perfectly.
They just found the right thing.
Yeah, and they because of that they used it. Of course, I was like, yes, you can use that in the show, and I got a little money from it too, so I can't complain. But yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. So every episode of the show, we ask the same question. How did it all start for Alex Heflin? How did you go from a little kid climbing trees outside to the great musician that we see today?
Oh, man. Let's see. I mean, it definitely started in high school. I did all of the typical things that you would expect somebody who becomes a musician to do. Like I did band, and I did jazz band, and I did marching band, and I almost did choir, but I can't sing, so I didn't do choir.
Do you like marching band?
I hated it. I hated marching band. I hated jazz band. But
were y'all's marching band any good?
We had a huge one. We had a giant high school. We had like 3,000 plus students, and our marching band was like 200 plus members.
You went to high school in West Virginia, correct?
No, I'm originally from Los Angeles, so I lived.
Oh, okay. So you went to high school on the West Coast.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I spent.
Okay.
I guess I spent. Well, I was born in Boston, but my dad graduated from MIT and got a job in Los Angeles at JPL. He's an astrophysicist. Yeah.
Oh, wow. The Jet Propulsion Laboratory?
Yes, indeed.
Wow.
And he moved out there when I was 2 weeks old. So I'm basically born and raised in Los Angeles. I stayed in Southern California until I was 20-something. Time is weird now. I 23 or 4 maybe. But I did my bachelor's degree at UC Irvine. So I was in Southern California until I did my master's degree at WVU.
What led you to West Virginia?
My great-grandfather was the president of West Virginia University. And as a Southern Californian who was interested in jazz, I was like, I want to go to school at like UCLA or Cal Arts, or like the big names that are affiliated with important jazz musicians.
USC.
Yeah, USC is a good one. There's a lot of good people there, but on the USC UCLA argument, I prefer public schools to private just because I don't know. Yay, socialism.
Yeah.
But I applied to WVU as a nod to my great grandfather, and they gave me a full ride. So I was like, this makes sense. Plus, it's in Appalachia, and I'm trying to play the mandolin. So there's a lot of history for the instrument and the music related to it. Even though at the time I hated bluegrass music. I thought that bluegrass music was awful. I thought that old time music was boring. And my opinion of that has completely changed now. I love bluegrass music and I love old time music. It actually really opened my eyes to acknowledge that all music is fun and exciting in its own ways, and they all have their own like culture and reasons to be interested in them.
Yeah. The thing is, you mentioned that you were in marching band, you were in jazz band and all that kind of stuff. And you also played in rock bands and everything like that with other kids in high school, right?
Yeah, so my real like upbringing in music was I started a punk band when I was 13 years old, and that was like, I'm interested now. I'm in, like, I want to do this. We rehearsed like 4 nights a week for no one. We played almost no gigs, but I learned so much, and we actually recorded every single session that we ever practiced, like start to finish. We would show up after school, like 3:30 p.m., and we recorded it all on cassette tape. So we had this karaoke machine. We put a mic on the ground.
These kids, so they don't know nothing about no cassettes.
So we'd hit record and then we would digitize it at the end of the day. We had a system to put it on the computer, and we still have like thousands of hours of us recording and rehearsing and talking, and it was everything. We recorded the moment we started to the moment that we finished. So we have like recordings of fights that we had, like disagreements about not only the music, but like, there's like recordings of me yelling at my mom on the phone. There's recordings of like the drummer and the lead singer of the band at times hated each other. And one of my favorite and most, in my opinion, one of the most punk rock recordings I've ever heard, which someday it should be released, is the lead singer wrote this horribly egotistical song about himself. His name was also Alex. So it was called like Alex's Day or something, and he basically just like cussed about how he was the best person on earth, and he was going to tear down America or whatever. But then halfway through the song, in this particular take, he like picked up something and threw it at the drummer, and then they got in a fist fight. So the song breaks down into all of these like horrible shattering noises, and looking back on it, it's incredible to listen to. They've since made up. They're very good friends now. But
did you get into fights in school?
Not really. I was always kind of like conflict avoidant, and everyone else in the band was always very angry. So I was always kind of
that makes one of us.
You did? Or
oh God, not in high school.
Okay. In
elementary school, absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
Believe it or not, I was like this little skinny kid when I was in first grade and everything, and so yeah, I got picked on when I was tall and really skinny.
Oh yeah.
When I was in like first and second grade, and so I got picked on a lot. So
that was me too.
You definitely have come a long way since then, and you ended up getting a job working at Universal Music Group.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was your job there?
So I got a job.
When was this, by the way? Like you worked at Universal. When did you start working at Universal?
I guess to back it up slightly, I finished my master's degree in 2015. When I left there, I moved back to Los Angeles. I got a job at a production music library. And it was a really small company, and I was hired essentially as their director of royalties. So I learned absolutely everything about like collecting royalties on the performance end, on the sync end. I helped do a bunch of licensing deals. It was kind of a, multifaceted company. And while I was there, I actually got to write a few cues for Disney Channel, which was really exciting for me as well. But I left there, started a PhD program in Pittsburgh in late 2017, early 2018. Then the director of that program passed away, and I ended up dropping out, which was horribly sad because the director of the program was Jerry Allen, who, if people who are listening to this don't know who she is one of the very few pianists that Ornette Coleman ever hired regularly. which is insane in the first place. But also, she is a female jazz musician, which is not something that is as easily found as it should be. And studying under her would have been a great honor. So I got to do that for 2 weeks, dropped out, and then at that point, I got the job at Universal. The frame of the Universal job was originally basically like, we're going to collect royalties from YouTube. They were starting a new team that didn't exist before, collecting money from basically digital platforms. So YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. But what it ended up being was basically I was a manual claimer. I placed copyright claims on over 200,000 videos while I was there, which is
so
horrifying.
I'm sure a lot of people grew to hate you, huh? So when people got mad at YouTube putting claims on them, it was you behind the scenes doing that, huh?
It was me, but I think if anybody talked to me, I actually had a lot of conversations about what I did, and actually with some pretty influential YouTubers, because I, first and foremost, believe and fight for independent artists. I just think that YouTube should be a platform that independent artists are able to monetize their content and make money from. And I believe that it's kind of hard to learn information about what the system is, how it works, and why. So I ended up talking to Adam Neely, Rick Beato, Samurai Guitarist, a few other folks about how the system works and how they can use it to their advantage. And I also, it didn't work very well, but I worked really hard to fight for creator rights from the inside of UMG. There's a lot of policies that they have that I kind of disagree with. And one easy or good example would be like reaction videos. UMG believes that nobody should be able to react to their content, basically, and all of those videos should be claimed.
Oh, geez.
And I don't believe that at all. I believe that if you make a reaction video, you should either be able to split money with the original content creator or monetize it yourself. So
wouldn't that be fair use, though?
So fair use is very complicated. Reaction videos can be fair use. They also can not be. I think the real line is like, if you are adding analysis and like pausing the video and constructively criticizing it, and I would say like if more than 50% of the content is you talking and analyzing what's happening, then at that point, I would say 100% fair use.
So it's like a person who's making that call, right? It's not like an algorithm.
Exactly. Yeah. In some cases, the algorithm will claim it, but at that point, and that's a whole separate problem. But there is a way for people to fight for their monetization. The whole legal thing is a mess. It's a horrible mess. And
is that one of the reasons why you left?
It is. And I'm working for another company doing a similar thing now. But rather than like fight for multi-million-dollar artists and, UMG was just valued at $54 billion or something.
Jesus Christ.
I don't need to fight for them. They have plenty of money. So now I'm doing the same thing, but I work at a company where I manage 50 small creators. And I fight for their revenue. Some of these people earn, between $50 and $500 a month from YouTube. I'm fighting for people to earn a living, and I'm not doing it in a way that's against my kind of set of morals, like sometimes the UMG job was. I'm really happy to be out of the corporate environment and working for people that I care about.
Definitely. One of the things that really concerns me as far as a lot of the legal stuff is that it doesn't seem to be equal amongst everyone. The large artists, is if you play their music, it's going to get copyright struck. Mm-hmm. If somebody played my music, it's not going to get copyright struck, even though I copyright my music. People have played my music and it didn't get copyright struck. But when you play Ariana Grande, it gets copyright struck in like 5 minutes. So it seems like the big artists have more legal protection behind them than the smaller artists.
It's 100% true. I mean, the only thing that you can do as an independent artist is put your music in Content ID, which will mean that YouTube will scan stuff on your behalf and videos will be claimed with anything. Like basically, if someone uploads like a straight cut of your track, like it'll be monetized on your behalf. And like you can do that if you distribute your music through DistroKid. Like you can opt in to automated claiming like that. But the problem is there's no nuance to it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are a big artist or you work for a big label, then you can have as much nuance as you want. And that's something that I would love to fight for. I mean, like, if you're a huge artist, like if you're Drake, for example, you can individually set a claim policy per song. Like you can say, I want this song to monetize if it's a 50% match. I want this song to monetize if it's a 100% match. I want this song to only like find and track stuff, but let other people monetize it. If anyone uploads this song, I want it to block. And I think that should either be accessible to everyone or completely changed.
Yeah.
It's really hard to argue with billion-dollar companies.
Well, because the label that Drake is with is a label called OVO, which is under Warner. Okay. So Warner is going to have a relationship with YouTube. Do you think that there is special treatment that major artists get when it comes to Spotify and like playlisting and all that kind of stuff? Because I would go on Spotify and I would see this huge banner for the new Drake album, this huge banner for the new Lorde album, right? I remember when Lorde came out with her latest album, Solar Power. I go to Tidal and it says new album recommended for you, Lorde Solar Power. Now look, I like Lorde, okay? But I haven't listened to Lorde in years. Yet it's recommending, I'm thinking, okay, why are they recommending this Lorde album to me when I haven't listened to anything like Lorde's music in years? Well, it's because the relationship that her label, Universal, has with the streaming networks.
It's complicated. Lorde is owned by a few people. And that's actually typically how it is. Like, a lot of the bigger artists, all of the majors have a stake in it. For example, it'll be like, this isn't necessarily correct, but like, say Drake has a song, right? UMG might have the rights to the sound recording, and then like Sony owns 2 of the writers, and Warner owns 2 of the writers. So all 3 of the majors will get a big cut.
Mm-hmm.
Most major artists, like a % of their catalog is owned by all 3 of the major labels. But like, yes, major label artists also get special treatment on every major distribution platform because, in the case of Spotify, all 3 major labels own a huge stake in the company. So they essentially share in the revenue, which is a little bit skeevy because it means that if they pay artists less, then they collect corporate profit, which means that they earn more money.
Yep.
So it actually is better for major labels to pay artists less. But all of the major labels also have direct point of contact with all of those distribution partners. Like the marketing teams talk to Spotify, Apple Music, etc. directly, and every week send over their new releases. And that's essentially how all of the new released, the New Music Friday playlists are curated. It's just a conversation with majors. They do look at like when you submit your music to...
Yeah, you can pitch your music to their playlist.
Yeah. But largely if you're an independent artist, you're going to be ignored. Unless you're somebody who's
unless you have people that know who you are at Spotify.
Yeah,
so
that too.
There are people who regularly end up on at least the lower editorial playlists, right? Mm-hmm. And it's really because they have fans at Spotify. There's a couple of people at Spotify who know who they are.
Wolfpack is a great example of that, right?
Yep.
They're all based in Los Angeles. They know people. They have those connections. And that's...
But they're not signed to a major.
No, they're not signed to anyone. which is, I mean, they're
it's kind of like it's kind of like Maddie J. Like Maddie J, when she first started, when she came out with her first EP, which was last year, her music didn't end up on any editorial playlist. Like none of those songs ended up on any editorial playlist. But then she comes out with her next single after she releases that EP, and it ends up on like 2. And then she comes out with another single and it ends up on like 3 or 4. And then she comes out with her EP, and a number of her songs have now ended up on a pretty decent number of editorial playlists. And it's not necessarily like her music is that much different than what it was in 2020. It's only been a year, but it's because, you know, there's people at Spotify who like her and they probably follow her on social media. And so they're going to put her music up. And plus, she's popular and her music's going to do well. So they know if they put her music on their playlist that it's going to do well because she has a good fan base. But it really comes from, you know, if somebody at Spotify who's in the editorial department is a fan and they like your music and they're the person that curates a particular playlist, you're going to have a huge advantage, you know? But the labels, and it's not even just the major labels, it's even independent labels very often have relationships with people at the editorial department at Spotify. Because if you look at, have you ever heard of the lo-fi label? I don't know if they're a lo-fi label, but they're definitely a label that puts out lo-fi music called Firefly Entertainment AB.
I haven't heard
They're
of
a Swedish label. They're an independent label, but so many of their artists end up on the lo-fi, the lush lo-fi editorial playlist. And it's like maybe like at least a third of the artists from Firefly Entertainment AB ended up on the lush lo-fi editorial playlist. So clearly this label has a relationship with people at Spotify.
Oh, yeah.
So it really is more of who you know or who knows you than a meritocracy. So I tell people all the time, if you don't end up on the editorial playlists, then it's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean you're not any good. It just simply means that they probably just don't know you, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly it. I'm never going to be on a playlist. Like it's just never going to happen.
I wouldn't go that far.
But that's okay. I like being a diamond in the rough. If only one person hears my record and they like it, I'm in. Like that's all I need.
Have you met anybody at Universal who could help you in your career? That like, did you meet any artists or something like that while you were there?
I met a couple people. I ran into Eminem in the office once, but
Oh, wow.
that wasn't a very significant thing. Justin Bieber was also there at one point, but I wouldn't reach out to those people as like an effort to, you know, continue my career in any way.
Did you get to talk to them?
A few sentences. I mean, I'm not a big Justin Bieber fan, and it looked like he was wearing a trash bag. I'm not a big fan of his fashion. He was wearing like a triple extra large sweater that went down past his knees, which is a very Justin Bieber thing to wear. And I didn't want to offend any artists because you don't want to do that if you work for their label. But I met a few people in A&R, and I met a few other people who like helped to work with some like editorial content, because UMG also publishes a lot of their own reviews, which is obvious, but also feels weird. Because like,
wait a minute, they publish their own. What do you mean they publish their own reviews?
They own a few media companies, so that they'll just like, if Justin Bieber releases a new album, then they'll review it in their own magazine and give it 5 stars.
Oh my gosh. Are you serious?
So I mean, I have no desire to talk to an A&R person at UMG anyway. Like, and if I did, they'd probably be like, yeah, you can sign to us if you give us all of your rights, and then like give me like a $10,000 loan for something that I don't need. Like, I'd rather make my own music in this room. And I mean, honestly, like, if we're talking about the way that singles are produced now, like, most of the time, unless you're like already at the top, like if you're a Drake, if you're a Taylor Swift, then you're recording in the super high-end studios that UMG owns. But like, if you're a one-off that they found on TikTok, it's probably a $99 USB mic in your laptop that the whole single was recorded on.
Wow.
That's very common. So like, my setup is actually better than a lot of stuff that is put out in like on those high-end labels. I'm not complaining.
Well, people are not A&Ring anymore. Like because back in the 90s, people would say, all right, we're going to find this person who we think can sing. Like maybe we saw them at an open mic night. Maybe they have a manager that I know, and we're going to bring that person in the office. They're going to sing for me, or they're going to play me their demo tape that they spent a bunch of money recording at a studio. And then I'm going to sign them, and then we're going to put them in artist development for a few years. And then they're going to come out with their first album. We're going to have them work with a songwriter. We're going to have them work with producers to help them develop as artists. That ain't happening no more. Let's be real. That's not happening anymore, right? What's going on is that, yeah, people are going on TikTok and they're looking at who's popular, and then they're signing them to deals.
And they just sign one song, and then it's like a ridiculous deal, and then UMG collects like, $300,000 for the song and then dumps the artist. Like that happened so many times while I was working there. So many like one hits on TikTok. And I mean, because they have access to YouTube system, it's very easy to earn money off of the back of those songs, because you can just go and claim all those TikTok videos. But I mean, there's like some relic of the old system. And I went to a few of those events, like the artist development events, and they all just felt so weird. Like there's a few places in Los Angeles where people will scout for talent. Like one of the best or most famous ones is the Monday at Hotel Cafe. It's like a showcase that happens every week, and it's kind of a very like in-crowd thing. Like you have to know one of the regulars to get in, and then you get in and
That's
you play your 3
everywhere in LA.
songs. Yeah, exactly. And like those are actually like pretty fun and organic, unless a talent scout shows up. In which case, like the whole night is just weird. I went
high pressure.
Yeah,
huh?
I went to a few like private events where like they had one of their artists performing, and I can't name them just because I don't remember. Like they were some of their smaller artists, and those also felt weird because it was like the artist who's like clearly struggling and desperately wants to continue their deal in front of like 200 executives and people. Like it's either executives or like super low rung people who are working at UMG, and like a lot of those people are trying to make it as a musician anyway.
Yep.
So like those people are networking with the artist, and the artist is trying to network with the executives, and everyone is just like desperately grabbing each other for attention and money. I just didn't like those vibes.
And let's keep it 1,000. A lot of these execs are musicians who couldn't make it. So I mean, that's
for sure. Or just didn't make it,
definitely
because
the case.
Making it has nothing to do with the quality of the content that you make.
No.
I'm not even like.
Well, I mean, it has something to do with it, but there's a lot of people who are extremely talented who never get signed.
Yeah, that's more what I was trying to say. Like, definitely some people who are truly special, like, are fast tracked to success because of it. But like on average, everyone who puts time and energy into creating music becomes good enough to create a pop song, right?
I'm not really sure if I agree with that, because there's a lot of people who have been doing this for a long time, and then I listen to their music and it doesn't sound like
Maybe I
it.
just believe
I'm
in
just
people
gonna be
too
real
much.
about it. Well, I mean, it's good to believe in people, but and I will say that it is extremely unlikely. I mean, I would say as unlikely as I like to believe things are, that somebody gets signed to a major deal where they're going to get a big push these days solely because of their talent.
Oh, that's very true.
It's almost never. There's usually something else.
Most deals
on.
are the label recognizing that an artist is getting success with a song and then trying to piggyback off of that. That's like the most common thing. It's very rare now, exactly as you said, to like really push an artist fully and like try and sell records.
One thing that I really recommend that people do is to do a Wikipedia on all of your favorite artists, like the artists who you think are so successful, the artists who you think are just gods among men, right? And look at how they got on. Just read the stories on how they got on, how they got discovered. You will find most of the time it is not necessarily because a bunch of people like their music. It was because the right person liked their music at the right time or just wanted to work with them at the right time. Like you look at you ever heard of Ava Max?
Oh.
The artist Ava Max?
Yeah, she's the UMG artist.
Yeah. Yeah, I like her music, but you know how she got on? She got on because she sung Happy Birthday to the producer known as Circuit. So Circuit, she sung Happy Birthday to him and he wanted to work with her. Isn't that crazy? Like literally just being in the right place at the right time, because Ava Max, as talented as she is, had been trying and struggling to get on for years. But that one little incident at a birthday party is what got her on. It's crazy. Like you look at Billie Eilish. Billie Eilish worked with Phineas. Ocean Eyes was not the only record they did.
Oh, not at all.
They did a lot of records together. And none of the records popped off, but then Ocean Eyes did.
Yep.
I would imagine that the right person shared it.
Yeah.
That the right person reposted it on SoundCloud and it got a lot of plays and it went viral. Back when it was easier to go viral on SoundCloud. It's pretty much impossible these days, but...
Oh man, it's so hard to go viral on SoundCloud now. Yeah. It's also, SoundCloud is a complicated platform now.
It's hard to go viral anywhere.
It's just TikTok. You got to go viral on TikTok.
Everybody's going viral on TikTok.
Or YouTube.
YouTube is still big. People are going viral there. But going viral on TikTok doesn't usually get you signed unless... Well, I don't know if I should say that. I mean, Lizzo ended up getting signed because her song went viral on TikTok.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that Lizzo, her record... what is it called? Truth Hurts. So Truth Hurts ended up going viral years after it was made. So the record came out years before it went viral on TikTok.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a thing that happens all the time now because of social media, which is why, like, to major labels, catalog content is always the most valuable. Like, you just want to see how much stuff you can amass because you never know, you know? What's a good example of that? Darude's Sandstorm is an amazing example of that. Like that song had been out forever, and then it became a meme, and then started collecting like hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. You know, years and years and years later.
Yeah, it came out like what 2000.
Like I remember hearing that when I was like 13 at Six Flags, waiting in line for what was the ride? I think it was like the Riddler. In Southern California, they played Darude Sandstorm all the time. And then I didn't hear it for more than a decade. Like,
I think every Six Flags has a Batman themed ride or something like the Riddler or whatever. Cause like the last Six Flags I went to was in San Antonio, and they had the Joker's Revenge, and they always do stuff like that.
Well, I mean, that's an example of media licensing, right? Like, that's how marketing companies work. They contact, I mean, major labels do that same thing too. They're like, hey, you got a new movie coming out? Like, put my song in the SpongeBob movie, and then we'll sell our song using the movie.
Yeah, and major labels will actually now go to TikTokers, and they will pay TikTokers money to try to get their records to go viral. Hey, can you do this dance or whatever and try to get this to go viral? It's all manufactured.
They
really
try
is.
really hard to do. I mean, I'm sure you've like seen challenges, right? Like some of those have been organic and other ones have not. Like what I'm gonna try and think of one of each. So the Drake, the Kiki challenge, I think is what it was called.
Yeah.
It was a thing where you would make a video where you played this song and then you would put your car in neutral and walk next to it while it was moving and dance. And that one was actually organic. It was not manufactured by the label. And then on the other side of that, Nicki Minaj released a song called Megatron.
Oh, God.
And they were like, we want to do the Megatron challenge.
I remember that
And that one was completely inorganic.
That was like 2 years ago, right?
The labels reached out, the marketing teams reached out to like thousands of influencers, and they were like, hey, can you do a thing to this song? And we're calling it the Megatron challenge. And it didn't succeed nearly as well.
Yeah.
Because those challenges that aren't organic typically don't do as well as the ones that are. But a lot of them are completely fake. Yeah.
Young Money. Wow. I mean, I could say a lot about Young Money, but I won't. I'll just say that. But Alex, let me tell you, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for doing this. I know that your future is bright. And you guys go check out Room for Everyone. You will not be disappointed.
I got one thing I can show before I have the vinyl here. I can.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I can show everyone a copy. I'll grab it.
Yeah. So everybody, I want you all to check out the album Room for Everyone. And it is available now on vinyl, so you can get...
It is. I'm so excited.
Yes. Oh, it's beautiful. See, like, y'all need to check out Room for Everyone. Get it on vinyl, okay? Because the type of music this is, you're going to want to play it on vinyl. Believe me.
It sounds so good on vinyl.
I'm sure it does. I'm definitely going to get a copy, and I don't even own a turntable anymore. My turntable broke in 2008. So I'm going to probably go out and buy a turntable just to listen to this one. And if Maddie J is still selling hers, I'll buy her album on vinyl as well. So Alex, thank you for doing this.
Indeed.
And definitely you are a great artist.
Thank you so much. And thanks for having me. It was good talking.
That is going to do it for this week's episode. We will be back next week for another one, and I'll see you guys then.